My name is Malia,
Hi guys, my name is Leah Kroom.
and I host the Mental Playbook, and we're co-hosting an episode. And Leah is also the host of a podcast called the Anxious Athlete Podcast. Really excited to be here today.
Yeah, awesome. So I co-host the Anxious Athlete podcast, which kind of talks about my experience as a Division One athlete dealing with anxiety. Today we're co-hosting this episode. We're going to talk about building an identity that's not dependent on performance as it pertains to athletes and high achievers. So really excited to get into this episode and talk about some really important things with Malia and get to know her along the way.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is like the first time we're having a real kind of conversation. We kind of just talked about how a lot of our episodes are Q&A. So the fact that we get to do a co-hosting episode, conversational, is really new and exciting. And this topic of building an identity that is not dependent on performance, it's I think it's really important to know what that looks like. What does building an identity off the field look like? I don't know if you can speak about that first.
Yeah. So as a Division One athlete, a lot of your identity is either in the classroom or the field, or some people pool, whatever court. And I think as you get older, you kind of learn and you see your friends who are not collegiate athletes start to build themselves outside of sport, especially when we get to this college level. So my best friends are now building their hobbies and things like biking, which is a sport in its own right and competitively, but they're also exploring art and getting more into fashion and different things that because I don't have that time. I'm not being as delved into. And I think a lot of personal growth and a lot of performance, I think, also is improved when we explore different hobbies and things that are not outside of sport because we're not limiting ourselves to one identity or one box. So I actually saw this quote the other day and it was, oh, I'm gonna misquote it, but it's okay. And it was about thinking about your whole identity as a house. You have multiple rooms in that house. So some of them are living rooms, some of them are kitchens. You got a backyard, maybe with the pool, maybe not. But they're all different sizes and you have different functions for those rooms. So I think kind of incorporating that into how we look at identities for athletes and high achievers, we can actually build a fuller picture of a person because we have all of these different things playing together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I always question like what is identity because
Mhm.
we kind of just toss it around in the air, but to me identity is like, your personality, your skills, your values, and I feel like it's okay to have different identities on and off the field.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard because some people try to merge those identities, and I
Mhm.
think that's where the concept of finding an identity beyond performance comes in is because it's okay to have different identities. It's okay to have different values off the field. But understanding what those values are is the most crucial part of it. Um, but yeah, I think especially for young athletes, like
Mhm.
building an identity and off the field is really important because oftentimes the pressure is coming from the parents, the coaches, other teammates, especially when they want their kids to go pro at a young age. It's really hard to understand. And I know you can talk about this too, but that like we should have other hobbies, other activities. And what does that look like is, that's what we're talking about today is how can we build other interests
Mhm.
and find that balance.
Yeah. And I think that starts with also the dynamic of club sports. So obviously youth sports is like a very pressing topic in the way that parental pressure and like socioeconomic status also affect those things, which I think is a big pipeline. There's a obviously clear connection to club sports there. So I myself didn't play many club sports. Like my dad ran a sports company, so I just kind of ran around and played town and did his teams, which I think really taught me how to be an athlete with a lot of other different teammates on different sports teams, and then also be able to kind of move through different life experiences. Like, I feel like I can talk to anyone in a room, and I think that's because at such a young age, I was exposed to so many different people all the time, which obviously, like, there's 100,000 perks to athletics, and I think that's one of them. But club sports specifically, you start to kind of build this identity around all of my time, even as a young kid, is dedicated towards this one thing, which starts building like this sense of sacrifice and goal setting in young athletes, but they also are sacrificing social like instances. I had one of my best friends who is now a collegiate basketball player, but she was like super invested in soccer from, I want to say it was like third grade. And she had started playing club soccer when she was like in kindergarten, but she missed so many birthday parties. And when we'd go play other sports, like I myself played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse growing up, she played soccer throughout the year. So by the time she was in seventh grade, she was already burnt out because she had seen basically all the sides of soccer year round. And she
Leah? Mm.
glitched out.
Oh, wait.
It's like frozen.
Oh, there we go. Okay, you're back.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I like think about that all the time. And I can point to so many different like kids that I grew up with that were so invested at an early age and specialized so early, but by the time they got to high school, they either hated their sport or they hated themselves because their entire identity was based off, I am an athlete, my performance is everything, my parents are driving this, my is driving this, all my friends are from this sport. So even if I quit, I don't have a social scene outside of it. And it was really limiting as opposed to sport being expanding.
Yeah. And you just brought up friendships and social life. And I think that's a really important part, especially in my experience. I think, I mean, for me, I did a bunch of different sports, mostly for the fun of it. I didn't have a lot of pressure to
That's the
really stay.
point.
Yeah, but with my peers, I think that was different for
Mhm.
them, where I would see that most of their social life and their friends revolved around the sport, whether it was the club, teams, or with school. It was mainly in that area, and I always felt like it was maybe hard for them to branch out because they were just always with their team. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because of like practice schedules and whatever, but I think for athletes to know that like going outside your comfort zone means branching out, and I know it can be scary and whatever, but it's kind of necessary to really, if you really do want, if that's your goal to build an identity off the field, is first start with branching off and meeting other people besides your team, because yeah, it's so great to do the team build or team bonding and know your team off the field to see kind of what they're like and to build that connection, but also meeting other people beyond sports and widening your perspective. I think that's great as well, right?
Mhm. And I think like even if it's a similar like they're still athletes but they play
Yeah.
different sports. Like some of my best friends are volleyball and soccer players and like basketball players, but because they bring a different side of competitive and they bring out a different like I guess part of the athlete in me, I think
Yeah.
that's a really helpful point. But it's like I also have friends who are fine arts majors and I'm not particularly creative. Like of course I dabble in graphic design, in high school we had our poetry classes and I thought I did my big one, whatever. But I think having different people and learning their stories is also a really big part of enhancing kind of your performance. Like there are certain, I guess, like characteristics of an artist, right? The focus, the drive that are really similar to athlete that you can learn from to actually use to enhance your performance if you want to think about it that way. But also just in being a better person, there are so many different people that I feel like we have to learn each other's stories and listen and again learn from each other because you never know who's gonna get you to the next spot that you want to be to or
Right.
be at. We cannot speak English. It's break. Um, but yeah, I would love to talk about like how early praise, validation, and attention shape identity, like and what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I think especially at a young age, because I think it's always hard because you're young, that's the
Mhm.
point. You're growing, you're developing, you're learning, and you're also very curious.
Mhm.
So, especially when it comes to parents and coaches, we often receive either feedback, criticism, praise, and when it's mostly like one of them, if it's only praise, that's gonna really boost our confidence. But then when we hit a challenge, like what happens then, right? Does that take away our confidence? What do we do then? Or if you're only receiving, let's say, negative feedback from a coach at the young age, you're playing a sport, you're competing against other people, and you are not doing well. And obviously, there's always room for improvement, but when you have a coach who is giving negative feedback all the time, where is the constructive feedback for improvement? And so I always think about like when, as a parent and as a coach, and obviously I have not been in those positions, but it's really important to make sure that you are not always pushing your athletes and you are doing what they kind of want, or just I think just pushing them towards growth, right? And the best ways possible, and not hurting them with the pressure. And I think it's always hard to see that and always hard to hear that for parents and coaches too, because I think it's just always important to know what's best for your athlete, and that comes in when you communicate with that athlete and ask them, what do you want from me? Can I give you feedback? Can I listen to you? Like, how can I help you? And I think it's really hard these days with all these young athletes and teams and coaches and parents to, because a lot of things can get in the way of that. But I think when you just remind yourself, let's ask what the athlete wants to hear because they're at a young age and they don't know yet. And then we can help guide them and see what's best for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think I've had a couple experiences like coaching younger kids. And I think the first thing that I take when I'm coaching them is like early praise.
Yeah,
So whatever, even if they drop the ball, like I'm still like, good job for trying. But I think that comes with intentional praise as opposed to just
right.
giving everyone participation trophies, which I know is also a really big topic in, okay, we want to increase youth sport participation and also people's kind of sense of self, right? Everyone wants to feel accomplished, everyone wants to feel like they've won. But then there's the sense of fairness of the real world isn't like sport. And I think the earlier, at least for me, I was taught that at an early age. You can work really, really hard, and a lot of the time you'll get to your goals, but sometimes things won't work out because they'll work out better in a different way. Um, and I think that comes with learning how to deal with adversity, which I talked about with Dr. Kimberly O'Brien in one of my episodes. But building resilience from a really early age, I think, is so much more beneficial than learning how to deal with praise or become dependent on validation as an athlete because there are going to be days like I guess the stereotypical we talk about like no one may be seeing you shoot in the gym during practice but at during game time like the lights are on and that's when the performers form.
Right.
um and I think if we can kind of separate like the the action is still the same, it's just whether or not there's people there to validate you.
Yeah.
And I feel like the marker of really a true athlete is that intrinsic motivation, right? That sense of I love doing this because I love doing it. It's not because the whatever I get to score all these goals or I'm with all these people that I love or that this coach really, really likes me. It's that this particular action I get to wake up and do every day, and that's fabulous, and I keep doing it. And a lot of pro athletes kind of have that drive internally. I was reading an article the other day, like Michael Phelps and Michael Jordan and all the greats, Simone Biles, you name it. The reason that they're so good at their sport is because day in and day out they loved doing it. And of course, they dealt with parental pressures and social media too, like all the haters and whatever. But then there are also their own mental health challenges, financial differences, like all these different factors that can draw away from what sports brings. Um, and I think if we look at how early praise and validation start shaping us early on and start changing the way that we go about that much more intentionally and focused on the effort, not just the product, we can actually help athletes have a better sense of self, but also recognize a lot of the point of life and of sport is just to try your best.
Yeah. And I do think too, like when it comes to praise and validation, it's easy to take that to heart.
Mm.
And that can be a good or bad thing depending on the athlete. But I do know in my experience when I would take it to heart and then I would receive the opposite of praise, then that would really lead to the downfall, right? So, like you just talked about, when you experience adversity, learning how to overcome it yourself with the guidance of others, teammates, and peers and coaches, I think that's where you learn how to not take feedback and praise so personally, because then that's a lot of added pressure, but you use that as motivation and as passion, like you just talked about, to really get to where you want to be.
Yeah. Like the biggest lesson I learned freshman fall of Division One sports was to not take anything personal.
Hmm.
So like I had a good season last year, right? And I'm fortunate that I did because I know a lot of my peers didn't. And they had to deal with different things that I didn't experience. But I also like I went through every single game so anxious that I was gonna make a mistake all the time. But I was not giving myself the praise and validation that I needed to be my best self. And that ended up manifesting in self-doubt and lack of confidence when I was playing. So then those mistakes that I may not have made, I made because I was moving nervously and I wasn't entering this flow state of I'm playing a sport that I love to play with people who motivate and encourage me, with a coach that like trusts me and brought me into her program at a school that has people who look like me type of thing. And I think sometimes athletes and myself included, we kind of draw things in because we're so focused on getting that praise and getting that validation, and we're so used to it that when we don't, we start kind of telling ourselves stories of, all right, well, if I make this play, I'm going to go get that validation. And
Right.
I think it's part of it is, yeah, we are goal oriented and task oriented as athletes, but the second that we can kind of take that away and be like, we have to, sometimes you just have to do things to do
Yeah.
as opposed to doing things for a particular praise or a particular like goal. Um, and so yeah, I guess moving intentionally, but moving forward, like any progress is progress at the end of the day. And I think that that also helps with shaping identity outside of validation.
Yeah, and I also think like when you're able to validate yourself, that takes away from other people or wanting other people to validate you. Because, right, when you believe in yourself, when you're confident in
Yeah.
yourself and your abilities, and most importantly, you trust yourself, you trust that when you fall, you're going to get back up, then you don't need other people to tell you, like, oh, that was a great pass, right? Um, but the next topic I kind of want to talk about is transitions, whether it's high school to
Mhm.
college or college to pro, and what happens when you are injured or when you don't go pro, right? There's times where um, sports can come to an end, whether it's intentional or not. And that's why building an identity off the field is also important because, right, what happens when your sport comes to an end? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I think about it all the time. Women's lacrosse does have a pro league, but I don't play at UNC or BC, and my goal isn't to go pro.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of athletes in like revenue NIL sports, the idea is that, okay, I'm going to make it to college, which means I'm also going to make it to the NFL. And that is the first choice, as opposed to, okay, here are a multitude of career choices that I can build off of. So I may be a running back in the NFL, but I also may be an engineer, or I may be working in software development in whatever California. So I think having different interests also can help you with career development. Like I know a couple of kids who are super invested in math, but they're also really interested in football. So data in the NFL may be a perfect role for them. But I think for me, over COVID, I spent a lot of time thinking I was in eighth grade, so I wanted to picture like a full high school experience that led to a full college experience. So I was really invested in like advocacy. So I was like big in mental health and big in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and obviously sports. So those are kind of like my big three. And then I did like some creative stuff over the side, like poetry, graphic design, and just like again talking to people and learning their stories. So from an early age, like I always had kind of things that supported me outside of sport, which I think ended up making me a better athlete because I was never over reliant on sport for this sense of who am I as a person, and if I don't have this, what am I going to do type of thing. And I was really intentional about that because I had had cousins and family members who had stopped playing sport, and
Mhm.
they went through that, I guess, grief process of, well, is this it? Um, and this fall, like I was injured and had to sit out, so I went from playing whatever. How long is a lacrosse game? I should definitely know this. 50 minutes, right? 50 minutes starting playing almost every second of a 3 month long season to, all right, fall ball, we have 6 games. I didn't play in any of them because I was injured. I didn't practice most of fall. I didn't even lift. And I didn't realize how much for me working out was actually like so integral to my day-to-day life. Like I went through to class, but I wasn't really focused, even though this is content that I love and obsessed with and I'm basing my career off of. And even the way that I'd interact with my teammates, like I was there, but I wasn't really there with them because they were on the field and they were doing things that I so badly wanted to do. And even spending my time in the training room, which I love our trainer, Marcus. He is one of the best people ever. And all of our equipment room and training room staff, like Howard Athletics is just a really great group of people. And it wasn't resentment per se, but I was in such a negative headspace because I was looking at the things that I couldn't do as opposed to looking at the things that I could do.
Mhm.
So this fall, I call it the sophomore slump, which for a lot of high school and college athletes is pretty traditional. You're coming off the high of freshman year, so you either excelled or you built some resilient and adaptable traits that you now transfer into the rest of your college experience. But this fall is it was really hard kind of looking at, all right, so this is my life without sport. But I got really into like traveling around the city and being like a little foodie. Obviously everyone loves food, but I think exploring different spots as a result of that and then like getting really into reading and I guess routine was really big for me as well, which I know is also pretty common for athletes in general and other high achievers. So like leaning on those was helpful in kind of shaping, all right, even if I stopped playing lacrosse tomorrow or I had a season-ending injury, I know that I could build a identity outside of it because I've started it. And I think the second that you start doing that earlier, it actually helps when it does potentially happen and
Right.
you're a little bit more prepared.
Yeah, I always think about like what happens to the NFL players who retire. What do they do? Because some
They moved
people,
to Florida.
yeah, some athletes don't have a college degree, right? So like they don't have that education and they need the guidance to continue and build their life again. And then also like when you lose your sport, you kind of just talked about this, but you lose the schedule, right? Like you don't have the wake up at 6 a.m., go to weight room and then practice and then game the next day. Like you lose all of that. But then that's time to start something new and use that time. But then I'm curious to know is like when your sport is your whole life, meaning like you're practicing like every day, you have your season and then your off season, but off season you're still practicing. So you have this super big schedule. When do you find time to build those interests and hobbies, especially if you didn't do that early on in your sports career?
That's a great question. I mean, I still struggle with it now. I have literally nothing figured it out. I like to say I'm figuring it out as I go, which I mean, isn't everyone. But I think taking time, like sometimes you'll have breaks in between. So a lot of it also like doom scrolling is probably the worst thing that you can do. We all do it, like I know, but I think I would like delete social media and I would delete Instagram like just off my phone, just to have that time to either meditate and just be like, all right, let my brain go back into its default network state.
Right.
Which is also like a really big topic nowadays, is getting our brain back to that boredom state.
Mhm.
But taking time, even if it's like 5, 10 minutes to just like be curious. So if you're interested in whatever, a new artist that you saw, or even just like going to a play at your school, doing something that's not already attached to your sport or production or your academics is a really easy step to kind of do that. The other thing is you can just talk to someone that you haven't talked to before, and you
Yeah.
never know where that may lead. Like that's a really simple way of just like, hey, I think you're cool. Let's go grab food and tell me your story type of thing. I think people underestimate how open others are to connecting. And even if they say no, you can say that, all right, I tried to put myself out there and I made the effort to kind of explore who I am outside of sport. And yeah, I feel like I answered that a little weirdly, but we'll
No, that
circle
was
back
great.
to the answer
That
again.
was great. This reminds me of like high school versus college.
Mhm,
For me, even just as a student, I went to the same school for a good amount of time.
mhm,
And so reaching out to other people was kind of weird. It was
mhm,
like not normal, if that makes sense, because it was a small school. We were with the same people every single year, and no one ever really branched out. And then obviously coming to college, it was an amazing transition and meeting a bunch of people. It was a lot easier to branch out. But
yeah.
when you're in high school, like, how do you branch out? And I think that comes with doing stuff outside of school too. And that's something that I didn't really do until I like started my podcast and found this other platform and started speaking to other people through this. But it is definitely easier said than done. But I think finding things to do, like whether it's going to watch a movie and or meeting someone at the mall, like there's other things to do, even if it's not on your campus, right?
Yeah. The other thing is like you can just like start learning different skills from YouTube too. Like I taught myself how to braid, like do like box braids, because I like always wanted them and I was not about to pay $200-300. And so like throughout the fall, like I would just kind of look at Pinterest and be like, oh, that's a really cute hairstyle. She has a similar hair type to me, like boom, let's get it done. And I think that also helps me kind of navigating life as a like biracial woman too, picking tasks that you may have kind of as like your, I'm not gonna say fundamental identity, but like things that you can't change, and kind of building off of those. So like I'm from Massachusetts, I was born in Texas, and I've lived in Miami. There are certain kind of like activities that are associated with each of those places, and kind of using those also to inform how I move throughout the world. Like I'm in Miami, I bike a lot. A lot of it's activity. You're also super social. You're eating a lot of different foods, but you're also like engaging in different cultural activities like fashion and art. And I think using those to kind of inform how you move throughout the world, even if you're from a suburb, like there may be a particular dish or like I got really into baking this fall because it was something that was easy to also measure. Like you put the eggs in the thing and like it was a nice measurable task that kind of was similar to playing sports of, all right, you go to practice, you have your game, you score your goals, you win type of thing. And there's like a linear path, which I also think for athletes, the sense of predictability is really nice too. When you're building an identity outside of sport, it's usually really predictable. Okay, you start sports, you train, you go hang out with your friends after practice, you go eat, you go home, that type of thing. And finding tasks that are similar to that, can also kind of alleviate any anxiety about, all right, who am I outside of sport and how do I kind of start building this identity when you can be anyone you want to be type of thing.
Right. And so identity has so many different components. Like we talked about the skills and building personality and a social life, but then you also just brought up like the belief system,
Mhm.
whether it's culture or religion, that plays a part in whatever your identity and values are. So obviously there's that whole other component to kind of tap into. Um, and learn about. And I think that, I mean, comes with like learning about your family, your history, and, meeting other people like that. And I think, when you find someone who has similar interests or similar beliefs, I think it's really easy to connect and also like continue building off of your own identity. Um, So, the next topic we can kind of talk about is curiosity over competence. And it's really easy, I think, for athletes to be like, oh, I'm so good at this. I am gonna keep doing this, right? It's hard to find something new and actually start it. And maybe it's easy for some people, but I do get this idea where like I'm not going to do this because I'm not good at this.
Right.
And for me, as someone who isn't really much of a competitive or I wouldn't say I'm a great athlete, I play mostly just for fun. Um, but so to me, it's like I'm okay that I'm not super great at this sport, but that's okay because I'm going to get better at that. So taking that mindset and applying it to new skills like baking and other hobbies like that is it's a lot easier when you change your mindset, right? I don't know what
Yeah.
your thoughts are.
I mean, obviously everyone starts out and they're bad at sports. Like no one picks up a
Yeah.
basketball and is super great, and no one like starts figure skating is fabulous. So when you kind of think about that in that way, like obviously it kind of helps alleviate that type of aspect. But I also think, especially as you get older, curiosity isn't as like celebrated.
Mhm.
Um, you are kind of what you're effective and productive at. So like acknowledging that, hey, I'm starting this and this is new and I'm not supposed to be good at this. And then if you happen to be, you actually have a way better perspective on that. But I also think that comes with just like being open. So we learned this in psychology, but there's like the five personality traits. So openness, conscientiousness, which I mispronounced, extroversion, agreeableness, and then neuroticism, which definitely should be reworded because it's not like the nicest way to say that. But part of being part of being you is some people are super open to things and some people are not. And forcing yourself to kind of start something new and being uncomfortable while it sucks and is uncomfortable, it's also you're also learning a different part of who you are. And I think if you can start something and expect to fail, you're going to learn how to fail and then be able to succeed because you've learned how to fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the first time I tried to walk, I fell down, but eventually I figured out how to walk, and now I can run and now I can sprint and swim and do all these other things. So, um, there is novelty, there's nobility. There's a word that I'm looking for that we're gonna skip over. But there's a really, really important part in starting over and beginning new that you get to learn from the beginning. I started boxing like very intermittently because it's good for footwork. So I was thinking, okay, like I'm an athlete, like footwork is good, like let's do that. But it also builds a lot of like resilience and kind of that toughness that as an athlete you want that edge. But I sucked at first. Like I was horrific and I couldn't get the steps right and I kept messing up and messing up. But I went in expecting, okay, I'm athletic, like I'm gonna be able to pick this up immediately. And of course that was false. I'd never boxed before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when you are so set in your identity of, okay, I'm good at everything that I do because you do it all the time, you become reliant on the fact that you're going to be good at everything as opposed to saying, I'm going to be bad at something, but that means eventually I can get better. And that kind of progress as opposed to product, or production, like switch that you can flip. I mean, the world's your oyster at that point.
Yeah. This brings up this idea of social media when we only see like the highlight reels and other
Mm,
people's accomplishments. It makes it hard because then I'm thinking, well, she got this huge championship or whatever so quickly, and
mm,
why is it taking me so long to get there, right? So I think about just the fact that we are all on different journeys and
mm,
that it all takes time and there's going to be progress. But I do want to talk about social media and its impact because that's like kind of all we see. We don't see like people falling and overcoming or like, dealing with adversity, right? It's really only the highlight reel and the good parts about it. And that's always difficult and can really impact our mindset and our beliefs. And that does, I think, also affect our confidence. And when you're starting something new, it's like you said, it's okay to be bad at it. I mean, I was trying to curl my hair this morning and I got the brush stuck in my hair, and like I start over, right? So
yeah.
it's just like we all learn and it takes time. Some people it might take a shorter amount of times, others might take longer, but I do think when we're looking at social media and seeing everybody else's highlight reel, like we can't think too much into it because that I think that will degrade our own uh identity.
Yeah, 100%. So you talked about kind of your transition from high school to college. So I think our next topic could definitely be like, what do you wish athletes knew before their sport ended, and kind of what did you wish you knew before your sport ended, or sports rather?
Yeah, I think so for me. during my flag football season. Like I said, I wasn't super competitive, but for me, the ultimate goal was growth and development. Because flag football was a new sport for me, it was a new sport for the state and the city. Um, it was new to our school, so it was super new to everybody unless they um, kind of played it outside of school. But this was the first time I got to play. And with me, whenever I had an incomplete pass, I wanted to start over and do it again and get that kind of rebound, right?
Yeah, perfection.
Right, right, exactly. And so one of my last games that I ever played in, we were doing this play and it was kind of confusing in my head because it was all going really fast. We were super close to the end zone. This could have been the scoring touchdown. I could have been part of this play and I messed up. And it was really difficult. My coaches were like, "Come on, Malia, it's like they subbed me out, put in someone else. We
Okay,
luckily
rude.
we got the touchdown. But I had to make a decision like I have one more game this season. Am I gonna play it? And I didn't play it because I just like I was really devastated with that play. And think about it now is like, well, like obviously like there is this idea of perfection, but for you all athletes, like it's okay to make those mistakes. But and obviously when you get another opportunity, take it. Um, I mean, it was different with me, but I'm now starting a girls flag football club at USC. So, like, I'm finding other opportunities and I'm really willing to, grow and develop and, take those chances. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point about the pursuit of perfection, especially in sports. It's really easy because a lot of them are metrics based. So I think about like track a lot. I have some friends who are track and field athletes, and they're like, "Well, I didn't get a certain time or I didn't get a certain distance," and their immediate is like, "Okay, I failed." Um, and I would never be able to do that because I would get so anxious about achieving that number all the time. So I'm grateful that I never stepped on a track. Um, but I think navigating like how do we look at how do we look at pursuit of perfection as opposed to just perfection? And like the thing is there is no one perfect play. You know what I mean? And especially as a young athlete, like that was always my thing. I would be scared to shoot or make a certain pass because I wanted the play to just like unfold in this magical way. And that's not how it works. Like you're gonna have a really scrappy defensive set, and then you're gonna transition the ball, and it may be absolutely hideous, but then you're gonna score a goal that looks okay. And it gets on the board. Do you know what I mean? So I think again, I talked about it earlier, is the effort is the goal of it all. Um, and that kind of goes into the sense of like at the end of the day, as long as you tried, you tried. And, performance can sometimes help. Or so performance sometimes is the goal, but sometimes the point is also just to learn from that experience. So even like you said, you from an early age, like you understood that sacrifice of I made this mistake. Here's the way that I want to rewire it and fix it and be able to say, okay, I know that no, moving forward, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And I think that learning process kind of plays into the sense of curiosity that athletes do need. Like, you need to be curious about your sport. You need to watch film and have a keen eye as you're looking through those plays and looking at your teammates move throughout your set. But then also looking at, like, I'm curious about getting better. Like, what are the new drills and techniques that I can learn to help me be an athlete? Because I think if you rely on the same things over and over again, you're going to get the same results. So
Right.
even if you're performing well, if I'm a new athlete and I'm choosing multiple different ways to practice this whatever shot or this particular like drill, I'm gonna have a better time doing it because I'm learning in different ways and my brain is moving and I'm actually thinking about what I'm doing as opposed to mindlessly going through the motions of the same things over and over and over again. And when I hit the wall, I'm not changing it and I'm not building outside of it. I'm just sticking with what I know. And I found like, especially at a Division 1 level, that's where a lot of athletes hit that wall is you're doing the same thing in and out, day in and day out. And so the burnout rates are higher. Like,
Mm.
okay, wake up, you go to practice, you get food, you go to the treatment, you go to class, you shower, go to class. That routine, it's really nice, but it's also easy, really easy to hate the routine if you don't get the product out of it.
Right.
Um, and that's comes with like again, finding joy in the process and being curious. But yeah,
Yeah. So, what's one simple step listeners can take this week, whether you're an athlete or a student, to kind of build your identity beyond your sport or your career? Um, I think one thing that comes to mind that we kind of already talked about is building a new skill, whether it's looking up on YouTube something to do or, some craft to make or go ahead and open a recipe book and try baking. Just try something new, right? What do you think is something we can do?
I did it this fall, but it was like a personality inventory dump. So I literally like I wrote down whatever my name on a sheet of paper. I like found this off of Google, so I'm a little nerdy.
I like,
But I like wrote my name in the middle and then I wrote all the roles that I play right on the outside. Because I think a lot of athlete identity is also associated with what you are is what you do. Which to some extent is true, yes, but there's also like you are a person outside of your roles, and I think you can kind of learn to do that. But I wrote my roles down there, and then I wrote the different like things or traits that I associate with those, um, I guess, roles. And then I circled the ones that I feel like I fit. Um, and then I was like, well, okay, so I know I'm really passionate. I know that I'm hardworking, right? And that comes from sport, and the other one comes from school. I know that I'm disciplined, right? All those different things. And I was like, but if I didn't have those roles, would I still be those things? And
hmm,
I was like, hmm. And I was like, so did they foster them or did they form them?
right.
And I went into this whole like metaphysical thing, but I was like, well, an artist is also focused and disciplined. So I was like, what can I learn from an artist that I know about their work? So I texted one of my friends who's in photography, and he was like, I'm drawn to photography because I'm passionate about it. And I went and I like just watched him kind of do what he was doing, which sounds weird, but I was like, this is the way that I feel about lacrosse, and finding those things and also translating your passion into other things also makes you appreciate it more. So I would say my tip for listeners is do a personality inventory and look at the ways that you view yourself and look at the roles that you're playing. And if those line up, continue doing what you're doing. And that's how you know you're not doing stuff for performance and you're not building your identity because you want the product. But if not, then you have an opportunity to just, even if it's like a casual vlogger. You know what I mean? Like, say you start like vlogging 3 seconds of your day every day, or being a content creator, whatever that thing is that you feel like you wanted to try and you have the personality traits for, like, go for it.
Yeah.
What would your tip be for listeners?
Yeah, I think a lot of times I think about like is what I'm doing applicable to other
Mm.
areas of what I'm doing? So when I'm playing a sport, what am I learning through the sport like you just talked about? Teamwork, resilience and what growth. Can I apply those skills to other areas of my life? And
Mhm.
I can easily say, like, yes, when I'm in school, when I'm learning, oftentimes we'll do projects where teamwork does come in handy because when you're not a team person, it's hard to work with them. So
Right.
being easy to work with and adapt is makes everything else easier, right?
Mhm.
So then the other things that come in is resilience. Can I overcome an obstacle? Like failing a test, like what do I do then, right? I'm gonna go to office hours, I'm gonna talk to the teacher, I'm gonna study maybe a little more and go out a little less and, see if that leads to growth. So I think when you can think about these skills from your roles and your titles, how can you apply them to other areas of your life and how can you connect them? The other thing I do want to bring up is we're starting a new year, right? 2026 is coming in and there's always a lot of possibilities and opportunities within a new year. And I think um, I love doing like vision boards. I don't know if you've ever done them, but I did one like last week and I printed a bunch of images of how I want my year to look like. And it was mostly like, like a book. I'm not a big reader, but I really do want to get into reading and I know I can do it because that's something easy I can just pick up. And then other things include, eating healthier, more organically and like making sure I get in some type of physical activity. And then also another big thing is how can I be more present? And that, whether that can be like taking 5 minutes to yourself and meditating, like in the
Yeah.
morning. And I think it's so hard for us now because of this doom scrolling stuff to actually take time to ourselves with no screens in front of us and just be in our
Mhm.
mind and be present. I think that's just another simple task to do. And then lastly, I just want to say like writing out your goals, whether
Yeah.
it's a friend actually told me to write my goals and make sure it's yes or no. So by the end of the year, I can say, yes, I did this, or no, I didn't. So something concrete like that. And then writing down your hopes. It could be something like, I want to be more, open. I want to be more open with other people. I
Mhm.
don't want to act closed off. And that's something that's not super yes or no, but it's like a hope, right? So I think writing down your goals and your hopes so you kind of have them in the back of your head as you start this new year, whether you're an athlete or a student or just someone listening. I think those are some great steps.
Yeah. I think my last note, again, kind of tying back to the idea of identity, there's this notion that like there's three parts of you, so your mind, your body, and your soul, and kind of finding different tasks to do that align with that. So for me, I use obviously my body for sports, my mind for school, but then my soul is like baking or meditating, or that's kind of like the fun stuff. But there's also this idea of there's three different types of like fixes that you need. So you need a physical, a mental, and then something that kind of like challenges who you are in your self-development. So I think about like if you can fulfill your big three, you don't want it to be in one specific part. Sometimes like yeah, there's overlap. Like you'll be playing your mind, your body, and your soul are connected, right? You hit flow state, the whole nine. That's the point. But having three different things that challenge you in different ways is going to give you a better picture of like who you are, who you're becoming, and then also you're able to have different experiences in life because you're not relying on one thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
multifaceted individuals. You guys
Yeah.
got it.
That's, I mean, mind, body, soul, that's like, that is the key to building an identity off, but beyond your sport. If you can
Yeah.
find something with each of those, I think like you're
You're
great.
set. You figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
do
gotta
have
take a
one,
note from them.
I have one question for you. I always ask this to all my guests, but I'm curious to know what matters most to you, the destination, the journey, or the company, and why.
Ooh. I might have to, I'm gonna need a hot second to think about this.
Yeah, think.
I'm gonna go with the journey. Probably 2 years ago at this time, I would have said the destination.
Hmm.
I think I moved a lot, like growing up. I went to two different high schools. I went to one school for 3 years, another school for a year. And I always thought I was gonna end up at a certain point. But if I had ended up at a certain point, like it just would have been linear and it would have been boring, and I wouldn't have become the person or met the people that I have today. I think the journey, like, y if you love the process, the destination doesn't really matter. And the place that I'm in right now, I do enjoy the process. So whether or not the product is there, right, the end goal is there, I'm gonna be okay because I knew that I tried my hardest and I made friends along the way and I explored outside of my comfort zone. So I would definitely say the journey. I also think like you can kind of get to a destination no matter what. And everyone's like destinations look different, but also everyone's journey looks different. So you can end up at the same we can end up at the same destination,
Right.
but the paths that we took to get there are completely different. And I think also the journey is what makes the person.
Yeah.
So if you go through and you have a straight line, that's awesome. Another person may have like a curvy way that they go through, and someone else it may be up and it may be down, but eventually they get there. And I think yeah, So I'm gonna go with journey. That was a really long-winded.
I
What would
love
you
that
choose?
though. I've never been asked that.
Wait, they've never. Wow. Okay, you've had some interesting guests. Wait, what?
Yeah. So this is a question that my dad did ask me this, and I started to incorporate it into my
Mhm.
podcast because these are three big components that,
Yeah.
like you just talked about, like it can change throughout your lifetime. And I think for me, I would say company. It's hard because company and journey, they really go hand in hand.
There's a lot of, I mean, all three of them are really aligned because
Yeah,
again, you're getting to the destination through the journey with company.
right.
So, you know,
That's why it's always hard to pick one, but I think definitely what matters most to me would be the company because I think they do really build the journey, but at the
mhm.
same time, like you just talked about again, is when you're overcoming obstacles, when you deal with experiences, they really do shape who you are, and that is your journey. And at the same time, people can also influence your journey as well. So it's kind of both, but I think I'm leaning more towards company. Oh, I think you froze.
Is it still frozen? Yeah, it's still frozen. No, this is so sad. Okay. I think a lot, the reason that I picked Journey, I think, is a lot because of my experience as a student athlete. Like, a lot of being a student athlete is like, okay, here's the goal. How do you get there? Um, and learning how to figure out how to get there, I think is more valuable than actually getting there.
Yeah.
There's a really cheesy quote. It's like you can teach a man to fish, or you can t give a man a fish. And
Yeah.
it's like technically you're getting fed either way, but the one guy's gonna go hungry after he's had that one fish because he already made it, but the
Yep.
other guy with the fishing rod who knows how to fish will never go hungry because he has the resources and the skills to figure out a way. And yeah, that's boom. I feel like that's summed up.
I love that. No, I think it's really great, and I think that is very applicable to sports, right? And even just life in general is like a lot of things you do have to work for. And yeah, I mean, it's great if it is handed to you, but when
Right.
you know how to get there and how to kind of do it and you're learning along the way, I think that's even better. And I think that's how you really build like grit and
Mhm.
resilience, is when you deal with those challenges and deal with taking like hours to find a fish and actually reel it in, right? And obviously it's the same end product, but different journeys to get there, like you said. Yeah. So I think this is the end of our episode. Thank you all for joining us on our
Co-hosted episode.
yeah.
Yeah. First of many question mark.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, this was actually really, really fun. So thank you for taking the time today. Thank you guys for listening. I know I yap a lot. Hopefully there was something that was relevant in there that stuck with you.
Yeah.
Um, and again, Malia, thanks for having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
co-hosting. But yeah.
Thank you, Leah.